Welcome to Deal Nation, where we tap into Launch Control's nationwide network to find out what's bringing in deals and how we can all work together to build generational wealth. We're joined today by Jaren Barnes, the founder of Land Maverick Society. Jaren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I am excited and honored to be here, my friend.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you on. I know a lot of people using launch control that are involved in land have come up through your program, are doing really well. I mean, I think that land in particular, well, not in particular, but really good coaching in land and figuring out how to get started. It's just it's pressing the fast forward button and really helping people get success. So happy to get your insights on the show. Um, let's go back to the beginning a bit. I mean, I know we talked a bit pre-show. You were originally a Bay Area guy like myself, and so how'd you go from growing up in the Bay to get involved in real estate investment?
Well, it's a long journey, but try to give cliff notes. When I was 19 years old, I had a heart full of dreams and I was pursuing a lot of stuff in kind of the nonprofit sector in ministry and met a girl on a ministry trip in the UK that was 23 and I was 19. And long and the short of it, I knew she was the one for me. And so after only 2.5 months of knowing each other, we got married. And I was only 2 days into being 20. So my birthday is July 5th. My anniversary is July 7th. And I found out that there's these pesky things in life called bills. And when you're a married man, you got to figure out a way to pay them. So I very aggressively was on the hunt to figure out how to start making some money. I had some friends that bought into a house flipping guru program in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they were trying to flip houses in kind of, the South Bay. So like Milpitas, San Jose, and were not very successful, but I bought into it, quit a job working for an insurance company that I had convinced the owner to hire me for with no college degree, and left that office and went out door knocking in East Oakland and a bunch of other places that very same day that I quit.
You know
I
what
was
I
working with a very unethical house flipper company, development company. I was the best salesperson. I got like 10 short sales under contract within 6 months and never got paid or anything, but it was a learning lesson. And I started a blog at the time called Real Estate Catalyst, and I made a review on Bigger Pockets. I ended up working for Bigger Pockets for like 4.5 months as a temp. This was way back in the day when it was just Josh Dorkin and Brandon Turner. And then from there, I thought that I had to make a choice between content marketing and real estate. And I chose real estate, moved from San Jose to Indianapolis, got synced up with a wholesaler, got my real estate license. He was also a broker. And then he hired me for content marketing. And we started doing podcasting and a bunch of stuff. Helped grow that wholesale company from about 8 to 12 deals, where Brett Snodgrass, my former boss, was kind of a solo operator, to 25 to 35 deals a month in Indianapolis. And
a month, not a year, a month.
A month, yeah. It was, we grew pretty crazy. Half my time there, I switched from content being my primary focus to being the head of the disposition team and getting all those properties sold. And while I was there, I thought I was going to be Brett's right-hand man for the rest of my life. And I didn't want to be in direct competition with him. So I was like, hey, where can I use my skill set as a house wholesaler in land or in real estate and not be direct competition? And it was land. So we interviewed a couple land guys, Jack Bosch and Seth Williams. And I was like, hey, there's something to this land thing. I started a land business with my former boss where I covered marketing. I got the deals and then he would fund the deal. Did a couple of deals in Southern Indiana, ventured out from simple wholesaling, and then had a connection with Seth Williams at RE Tipster, and then worked with RE Tipster for 3.5 years as his co-host and senior creative director. I've always been at this intersection of like content and real estate. And while I was there, I was on the side running my land business, and then parted ways and started training and coaching as well as scaling my land business. And so me and my wife, our legacy land business is called I Buy Land. And check it out, ibuyland.org. And right now we're doing about 8 to 12 deals a month on the buy side and selling about 4 to 6. So
Wow.
that's the size of our business there. And on the coaching front, I do things very differently. I um, I run a community called Land Maverick Society, and traditional coaching, you meet once a week, and they throw a bunch of information at you. They say, "Good luck implementing," and salute you off. That's not me. I give out my personal cell phone number to our members. I walk through everything with them hand in hand, call sellers with them, and we fund deals for our members. And the goal, kind of loosely, I mean, there's no pressure if they want to self fund or whatever, but the goal loosely is for us to be partnered with our members so that we can continue to make a bunch of money together. So that's it in a nutshell.
No, I love it. So I've got a few questions and comments. Something I've noticed that's come up kind of as a theme here on Deal Nation is just the entrepreneurial spirit. Like you were 19, 20 years old, just married, and your thought when you thought I need to get some money was I need to generate money. Your first thought was entrepreneurial. My first thought at 19 would have been like, oh my God, I need a job. And I would have been, all over the job boards. I would have been looking for someone to employ me. But the idea of just generating the money that was necessary was just kind of inherent. And it seems like in a lot of people that are involved in the real estate investment space, they either just right out of the gate just didn't even think about the traditional route and wanted to be entrepreneurial, or they were kind of caged in by it and can't and want to get break free and get into generating their own wealth and not depending on others.
Yeah, I will say I am a little bit of a different breed. I'm more of a hybrid. I'm more closer to what like Dave Ramsey calls an intrapreneur. I had no desire ever to like be the number one in the company or to found my own thing. I
Yeah,
just wanted to make a lot of money, and I didn't have a college degree, and I had a lot of pressure. I had a
yeah,
lot. Life was squeezed me very, very, very tightly in my 20s, and I had to figure out a lot of things out very, very quickly and kind of forge an unconventional path. I think I was definitely destined, to lead my own thing and lead a team and all that. But it is different. I have friends that are like these purebred. I've been selling candy since 7th grade, and like
sure.
all of a sudden
Yeah,
that's definitely not me. It was just more like my prospects and the job front was like not for Bay Area. It was like not making enough money to survive, barely to have an apartment. And so I was like, well, I got to figure out something else.
yeah. The thing about like what did you call it, an intrapreneur? I like that. That's
Yeah, entrepreneur. Yeah, Dave Ramsey has a
yeah.
whole thing on that.
No, I'm the same. I think is I definitely have entrepreneurial pursuits, but I do like the stability sometimes of having, working on projects, working with teams. But the one thing I've always loved about entrepreneurship, and I think that it's something that a lot of people gravitate towards. I had a friend owned a small business, and I hadn't seen him for years. Went to visit him, and he just put a sign on the door that said "Went to the beach" and just closed the business in the middle of the day because he wanted to, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, that's an amazing thing. Like you don't want to do that all the time because it's not going to be great for your Google reviews, not going to be great for your business. But the ability to just put a sign on the door, that a proverbial sign on the door that says "Went to the beach at any time" because you are in control of your business and your future and your time, that's pretty great.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's a very popular thing among the like successful land investors to go to Korean spa, which is super random, like as a cultural thing.
That I did not know. Okay.
Yeah, it's super funny. But like my friend Drew Haney, I think, kind of popularized it. He was stationed in Korea and married a Korean woman and turned everybody on to Korean spas. And it is very striking where the best day, honestly, for me to go and meet with other land investors in my network is on Monday. If we go to the Korean spa, to the Russian spa, I'm
Yeah.
now based in Chicago area. I'm in Northwest Indiana, so I'm on the Indiana side, but I could literally throw a stone into Illinois. I'm that close. But We will often find ourselves 10 a.m. on a Monday sitting in a Korean spa, being like, yeah, it's fun being rich, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, we got, launch. I meet with the sales and marketing teams of Launch Control every week. When I pitch that they should probably start going to Korean spas and schmoozing. I don't know how well that's going to go over, but it's a
Yeah,
good
man.
insider tip.
It's weird too, because like uh, you get naked, they separate guys and girls, and like you
Yeah,
full
yeah.
on, full like if you want to talk about breaking the ice, you will become friends very, very quickly. Being thrown into an awkward situation like that, it's funny.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said, I know you were having great success in the wholesaling space. I think you said 25 to 30 deals a week running with Brent
A month,
and
yeah.
a month, sorry. Yeah, a month. And really just firing on all cylinders. And I love what you said. You said that you wanted to do this in a way that you wanted to go into a new direction in a way that would not be direct competition with someone who had been a mentor and had helped you kind of build up to that stage. And I'd actually put a big circle around a question on my notebook that I wanted to ask is, a lot of people that are listening to this show are heavily vested in the distressed property market. So for those that want to get involved in land, do you see it as something that they can kind of small section add on to their operation, like, oh, now we're going to do wholetailing, or now we're going to get into novations, or something that now we're going to get into subject to that is kind of just a new step forward or a new element? Or do you think that they should treat it as a separate business with separate lead sources and separate marketing channels, and if they're going to go for really, really treat it as almost like a separate LLC and just differentiate their businesses?
I think you can do it as an add-on. Um, I think a really great source for deals that even a lot of land investors don't tap into is the runoff of other wholesalers in your market that have land leads that they're not capitalizing on. That was something
Oh,
that was a big eye opener for me. We were running into a bunch of land leads that we were literally throwing away. And then I was having these podcast conversations with these land guys, and I'm like, there has to be something here, because the reality is people in distress houses in some form or fashion, flipping, wholesaling, whatever, they have very aggressive, very expensive, very sophisticated marketing channels that get them really, really high quality leads. And they're taking these high quality land leads with that are probably motivated sellers and ready to practically pay you to get rid of their property, and they're just throwing them away. So I think that there's huge opportunity there. There is some slight nuances though between, say, the most comparable is a house wholesaling business. So they're probably about 80% the same, but
yeah.
the big difference is that in land, you're going to hold your inventory a lot longer. You're normally selling off to a one-off, like the equivalence of like a home buyer. So somebody who's like, not an operation, not a turnkey company, not a investor. It's like a one and done relationship, more or less. I mean, unless you get it in bed with some developers, but by and large, that's kind of what you're dealing with. So our average days on market last year were, I believe, 72 days. Um, right now, the market's a little bit slower, I think, in anticipation of the election. So I would anticipate like a 3 to 6 month hold. So 90 to 180 days is pretty average. Like right now, we're sitting in about 50 properties in inventory, and we just
Hmm.
continue to buy. And I told you, even like, we're buying for 8 to 12 and selling 4 to 6 right now.
Okay.
So that, that's just kind of what's normal in the land space right now. The market's a little bit slower. Normally it's roughly neck and neck, but that is a big nuance. The other thing too, and this is kind of a positive, is that it's easier to get deals in land and harder to sell, where I think it's the reverse in household selling. So in household selling, it's hard to get a deal, but pretty easy to sell. Because
Yeah.
I mean, as a lead disposition guy at Simple Wholesaling, I just had like 8 to 12 people that I just built relationship with and reverse engineered their criteria. So I was like, hey, this turnkey company, this buy and hold investor, this flipper. I know what they want. This is a good property for them, and I just reach out to them, and that's you just nurture those relationships. Whereas you got to do a lot more heavy lifting on the dispo side when it comes to land. I outsource all that though. I'm a real 80-20 guy. If you guys have
Okay.
not read 80-20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, that'll change your life. But I use land specialized agents, and it's very important for me to say not just a normal agent that sells land, but land specialized agents to kind of outsource all of our dispo efforts. So we just have our agents selling them, and we just pay them a commission.
And how did you originally start building up that list of land specialized agents?
So it's kind of still an ongoing, ever evolving process. There's a whole training on how you go about that, but high level, you want to look at different listing agents profiles online, whether it's a Zillow agent profile or if they show up on a website like landsearch.com, and you want to see loosely 30% land to other types of real estate. And then if there's other indicators, like if they look country, I mean, practically they're wearing like camo or a big old cowboy hat. They look like they listen to country music. That's a good indicator. And then if they mention land specifically in their kind of description of like their
Yeah.
agent profile description, but then you got to call them and you got to like talk shop with them, and you got to kind of like, use certain language like perk test and, slope and like this other stuff to see if they're to kind of vet them out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a nuanced skill. There's really 3 core skill sets of a land investor, and listen to our model. It's being an expert at comps and due diligence, navigating the conversation with the seller on the phones, and finding, vetting, and managing land specialized agents. Those are your money makers right there.
Yeah, and launch control it's something that you can really use on the dispo side. We suggest this a lot for wholesaling, but for that exact vetting case that you're talking about, if you're going into a new market and you don't want to get stuck with anything, especially anything beyond that 72 days, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't want to really be holding the bag when you're doing volume. So if you can use launch control to reach out and like let some of those buyers know that you've got properties coming through or land coming through on a consistent basis, you can funnel them, the types of leads that they're looking for, get them onto a text engagement list. Then once they text back, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can use text to run through that vetting process, right? Where if you're asking, a question about slope or a question about a very specific land question, and they balk or they answer incorrectly or whatever, then you might know that you can take that person off your core list. Or if they say, I do a land deal here and there, but I'm mostly single family home, or then right? So you can use it to vet. But the other thing that you can do is if you've got a profile in your system of that in let's just say Barnes County. In Barnes County, you've got 5 people that are looking exclusively for parcels that are 10 acres and up, right? And you get a 15-acre plot in Barnes County, and you use the drip automation function to send each one of them a message detailing the property, right? I've got this 15-acre property available. Here's the specifics. Let me know if you want to chat about it or come take a look. From their perspective, they're the only one that received that. But what you did is simultaneously send all 5 active buyers one particular piece of land, which gives you the potential to create a bidding situation, right? And if you have that preset up from the start, then it adds kind of speed and risk reduction to your dispo process.
I like that a lot. I actually did something similar. I didn't think about the drip automation. That's a fantastic idea. But I pulled a list of recent cash buyers, and I scraped a list of land. Am I back? All right. Sorry, my mic got all messed up there. But I pulled a list of recent cash buyers from PropStream, and then I scraped a list of specialized agents off various websites and sent out a text campaign on an entitlement deal that I'm trying to sell in Cape Charles, Virginia, where I got all the approvals to break ground and stuff. And that was it was good to get a bunch of activity going. I actually even scraped my entire contact list out of my phone numbers. Like I know a bunch of investors. Let me blast this thing out to everybody. And I did it
Yeah.
all through launch. So launch control is very powerful. I like launch control a lot. It's my favorite texting platform, mass texting platform, because of all this stuff that you do to be compliant and play by the rules. Like it is a little bit hard in the trenches when you're like, my initial message template doesn't work now. Like, what is this negative keyword? It worked on the other one, but what's happening here? Like, but I like that at the end of the day. And even like putting up with some of those parameters because I feel the safest texting through launch control. And because I'm in a position where I really care about my members and their liability and all that, I have a
Yeah.
lot of confidence using launch control as opposed to like a smarter contact or whatever other one, Sherpa, lead Sherpa or whatever. There's all these other ones out there, but I mean literally the fact that like the system forces us to manually send out every single message in batches. That's like that. We're doing it as right as we can when we use launch control. So I am very, very pro launch control over here.
No, I
Yes, when
appreciate that. And yeah, the system is geared to create the experience of a one-on-one engagement with someone, right? And so some of those things that we have to throttle or adjust are all in pursuit of that, of making it a one-on-one conversation, of not letting it get into anything that's, mechanical or overly focused on a like wide marketing approach, because it's not meant to be that. What it's really meant to be is yes, there's going to be a very heavy percentage of it that is focused on cold outreach, right? But the truth is that text engagement is super powerful at every stage of the customer journey, right? If you may have trouble getting somebody back on a call. You may have trouble, being able to get someone to respond to an email. But having text as a backup, even being able to say, hey, did you have a chance to take a look at the contract? And that's the only thing coming across in text. That's often the thing that's going to get them to re-engage, right? Because it's it's low profile and non-invasive when that relationship has already been established. And so we see text engagement as a through line from data to deal close, right? And you being able to leverage it at every point in between. And on that cold outreach side, if we can make it as personalized and individualized as we possibly can, all that's going to do is create a better experience for the recipient and get them much more likely to engage and communicate with your company through text, call, email, whatever selection of touch points are necessary in order to get that deal officially closed and dispoed. Like we want you to use all those tools. We just want text to be one of the foundational elements of it.
I love it. Yeah, and I love how you guys already built in some of that drip automation. Yeah, and it's very true. If you use a situation where, say, you send out a direct mail campaign, like we were talking about offline before this call, and you send out postcards or you send out blind offers or whatever it is, and you just send out a quick text and you time it right where it's a few days before mail lands, and you just give them a little heads up, you're going to have a higher conversion rate just on that one little move. So it's very powerful stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's wholesaling or land. What we have to do with the whoever the seller is, we have to create a relationship, right? And we
Yep.
have to give them the ability to relate to us through whatever channel or collection of channels is most comfortable for them. So, you're going to have people that don't want to deal with text, right? And that's fine. They may be a call person. They may be someone that clicks on an ad that you ran online, a couple weeks later. They're going to engage when and how they want to engage. And once they've done that, if you have multiple channels that you can then reach them on, then your ability to be able to close that deal go up exponentially. If you're locked into a single channel and you only can text them, you can only call them, you can only email them, the chances of unless you one call close, one email close, whatever, the drop off is pretty steep, right? But with additional channels, you have additional opportunities.
Yep, I love it, man. Yeah, I tell people all the time, multi-channel follow, especially on the follow-up game. You know,
Hmm.
multi-channel marketing is crucial for success.
Yeah, because it's, from their perspective, from the recipient perspective, right? They're not thinking, hey, Jaren's text marketing really was more effective for me than his email marketing, or was really more effective for me than the phone call process that I got, right? What they're seeing is they got an introduction to a company that's a solutions provider. That company is going to be able to get them a deal for this land, maybe even propose deals that they didn't know were available previously. And so the text message is a direct link to your company. The phone call, and when they're speaking to your team, that's a direct link to your company. If you send them an email with contracting information or whatever, that's a direct link to your company. They don't see that as three marketing channels. They don't see a performance of three marketing channels. They see that as one company, and just the ways that they engage with that one company. You've become a resource at that point. They're not looking at and judging your channels. They're looking at your company. They're evaluating your company, and all those things are just avenues to you.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I I think oftentimes people optimize in sales for getting the sale. And I've heard, I forget, I think I heard it on a podcast or talking with somebody, but I heard it put really well that in real estate, particularly for land, you're not optimizing for the close or the sale, you're optimizing for the connection because you are, I have, I mean, I'll share a story. My wife and at one time we had an acquisition manager. He didn't end up working out, but he worked with us for like about a month and a half. And uh, my wife, and this gentleman were working the same lead in Alabama. And I didn't like that this was happening, to be honest. If I would have known, I would have been like, don't do this. Stop it, you guys. But the truth is they were doing this. So, they were playing good cop, bad cop and pretending like they weren't the same company. And the acquisition manager came in and offered a lower price. And then my wife came in and offered a higher price, and we were assuming, or they were assuming, because again, I didn't know, but they were assuming that the seller was going to take the higher price. Well, the seller had a mutual friend on Facebook with our acquisition manager, and
Mm-hmm.
they were both from Alabama. And at the end of the day, she just liked and trusted and connected with him more. So she took the lower offer with my acquisition manager than my wife's higher offer, just because he had the rapport. And it's very evident, and one of the key components to really working seller leads correctly is building that connection and having, and people respond to different channels. A direct mail lead is not the same as a text lead. There's a reason why they responded to the text medium with launch control. And it's important to have variations of communication channels, because people are oriented different ways. Like if you were to send me a direct mail letter, there's a high chance I would never even see it. My mail gets all like filtered by my mother-in-law and all the other people that live with me. And uh, there's a very low chance that I would see it. I probably would laugh and throw it away. But if you texted me, there's a high chance I text you back.
Yeah,
That's how my personality is.
and it it's what you see versus what you don't see, right? So like I probably wouldn't really respond to a mail piece either. I don't really look at it. But let's just say hypothetically I did, right? I picked it up, and you and I are hanging out, and I pick this thing up and I go, hey Jaren, do you think this thing's BS? Do you think this is real? Like what, and we're having this whole conversation. And you're saying, oh yeah, I know somebody that sold their land really recently off one of those. It works. You can trust it. It's fine. All right. Well, I'm gonna do some research. Then maybe I'll give them a call. And by the time I called, I'd gone through all these questions in my head. I've asked a couple vetting questions. I've gone online. And so yeah, when I call you, it's a solid motivated lead. But you didn't see any of that background, right? Whereas sometimes you send a text and the immediate response 2 minutes later is this BS?
Yeah.
right? Like they're asking you, they're doing
Yeah.
the same vetting process, but they're responding immediately. You go, oh, well, okay, I have to navigate this. Yeah, you have to navigate it, but the end result is that something, or the point was that something piqued their curiosity. They do want more information. They do want to find out, how how legitimate this offer is, what the parameters of the offer are, or what the parameters of the solution are. And you just, you got a very stream of conscious like reaction from them on text, whereas a direct mail piece, or no, direct mail in particular, they had time to think it over before they called you.
Yep.
You just didn't see that.
And there's a bit of trade-off there. The problem is direct mail is so expensive now. When I first got started, I was thinking about it the other day. Direct mail was about 38 cents a record. Now it's like about 70 cents plus.
Yeah,
And according to some people that I know in the space, they say that on average, you're seeing, um, you know, the cost of the stamp rise twice a year is what it's looking like on averages. So it's going to continue to get more and more expensive. Whereas like when you go through launch control and you really factor out how much you're sending about like 3 to 5 cents per like item that you're
yeah,
sending out. So it's such a cost savings, but you are dealing with a lot more influx of correspondences and a lot more unmotivated people. And so, you do have to have a little bit more time in order to sift through all the noise to actually get the qualified leads. But it's totally worth it, because another big piece is that once you're set up after 3 weeks, after roughly about like 3 weeks of like onboarding with launch control. I've noticed though recently people getting onboarded way faster, like within like 2 days and stuff, which has been interesting. But on average, it's been about, roughly, I tell however members about 3 weeks. And once your account is set up, it's like a faucet. It's like,
yeah.
I want more leads today, so I'm going to turn the faucet on. Oh, I'm a little backlogged, so I want to work through and get some offers out, so I'm going to turn it off and not send out batches. It really is like that level of control, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, the registration process, like launch control, white gloves the entire registration setup and gets you a direct B2B relationship with the carrier, so that you can send messages on AT&T and Sprint and whatever. But it's where it any company that's using text as a platform has to be registered, right? So we were talking about, not if you think outside of REI, you're talking about on a daily basis thousands of companies that are registering, and the governing body that reviews this, they actually review it, right? Like there's actually a team that goes, yeah, the website's in order, the privacy policy is in order, they have a checklist that they go through, so they get backlogged, and when they get backlogged, there's a trickle down effect, right? But as they smooth out that process, as they kind of staff up and gear up for that, I don't hold me to this, but I would expect registration timelines to continue to just kind of scale down, because once that registration is greenlit with launch control, you're good. You can turn the faucet on, right? Like there's nothing about the platform that creates any kind of slowdown. It's strictly with the registration process.
Yeah, and I ran into that in other platforms too, that
Yeah,
they can be painful to deal with. But you guys do make it a pretty seamless process. It's honestly mostly
yeah.
just a waiting game.
And
But yeah,
ideally, text will be a foundational tool in your business that you're going to use month in and month out, year in, year out. You only have to do this one time, right? Like once you're in, you're set up, you're good. So it's think of it as getting a website designed. Think of it as getting the email system set up for your company, or getting a CRM in place and working out the fine tuning. It's a one time action. But once it's done, then you've got it, and you're good to go.
yeah. If you guys work with Land Maverick Society, not to do a selfish plug or whatever, but um, we make that process pretty easy as well. You have to make your initial message templates customized, but for all the quick replies, we have a copy and paste and categorize everything for you. And I just literally created 12 videos this morning where I went step by step between 30 seconds to like about a 10-minute video on certain stages of how to set up launch control, pull a list, scrub a list, skip trace it, upload it to launch control, send out a batch, and then integrate it with a popular CRM in the land space called REI Pebble. So I could literally copy paste and walk you guys through all that if you were in the land game.
Yeah, I love that. So let's jump to the launch control audience, or the Deal
Yeah.
Nation audience for that matter, and I'm working with you. So the launch control audience, we were talking about this a little bit pre-show. Launch control audience really kind of follows the subscription levels. And so people that are on our light subscription tend to be in the early stages of their real estate investment journey. Maybe they've done a few, they've done some deals, but not don't have quite the consistency that they'd like. Maybe looking to transition into land as an add-on, right? People that are at the core level, they've probably got a VA, they're scaling up, and then all the way up to the pro and enterprise shops. People like Brent that you worked with, right? That are they've got a team responsible for closing 20 plus deals a month, right? So really runs the gamut. So in terms of those kind of different core pillars of investors in REI, how would you suggest that they work with Land Maverick Society or get involved with Land Maverick Society?
Well, I think I'll answer that in kind of two parts. So Land Maverick Society as a standalone, we are going to walk you through the land piece. And launch control is a big core of that. And to be honest, it's land, and beyond that, like your systems, your infrastructure. If you're looking to bring on VAs, I help people have a whole protocol on like how to canvas for good overseas talent. By the way, people from Nicaragua are like, they crush as acquisition managers. Just a little tip. But I can walk you through all of that. And so, that's kind of parceled off separate. I would say in general, if you are integrating land into your business using launch control, probably a good course of action, regardless of where you're at in terms of how much volume you're doing. I would say start low, like start on the lowest tier, just so that you can work out the kinks, make sure all the automations are good, but you have to use like actual leads. Like I was just walking through videos this morning. When you set up a webhook Zapier integration, you actually have to push to CRM, like a record, in order to have Zapier have like name and APN number and county and whatever, so that you can actually title things correctly to your heart's content and your designated like go-to CRM that you're pushing to. So like you have to actually have some activity happening. You want to be able to fine tune like how you do your quick replies. Like we got it down to science now, where we have kind of lead screening, which are people that we don't know if they're like positive or negative persona yet. We don't know if they're open. They're just like, who's this? They're like skeptical. Then we have positive personas and negative personas, as I just mentioned. And the positive personas are what we look at as prospects. So we look at all communication in 3 buckets with launch control. We have responses, then we have prospects, and then we have leads. Prospects get pushed out. They're anybody who's remotely open to an offer, and they get pushed out to Pebble, and then they go through a qualification stage. And once they're qualified, which is loosely defined as them agreeing to sell at a discount because we're investors, and they have to be open to selling at a discount. So that's kind of our picture, like a whole talk track on that. Then they graduate from prospect to lead. And so leads are people who are willing to sell and are open to selling at a discounted rate for fast cash or what have you. So, with all that, I would start slow. I would start on the bottom tier, and then based on capacity, quickly move your way up. I will say that for us, we've been texting for about, in our own land business, for aggressively, I think probably 2 years, something like that. And we're loosely seeing about 1 deal for every 6,500 total outbound text. So that's, I don't know if you want to use it as a rule of thumb. It's probably people who are doing better than us, and we're just compensating with volume. We do a lot better on our follow-up game. but that's at least a starting point of real metrics of what's happening in our business. So for us to do that much volume, we're pretty much doing the highest tier of launch control times 2. So we have like double the amount of outbound, and we pay extra for it. So there you can, it's a lot of volume, and again, we need to do that to facilitate where we're at, but you can also compensate with a good follow-up and having multi-channel marketing touches and other things. So you could probably convert higher on kind of one of the lower tiers, but I would very much start slow and get kind of at least a good month to 2 months of fine tuning, and then say, okay, we're ready to scale up, and then turn the faucet on and bump up to a different tier. So that aside, whether you work with Land Maverick Society or not, that's the route that I would go. If you are getting into land from another type of distressed house strategy of some form or fashion, there's also something to be said about starting slow, because you have to figure out land. Land is similar to houses, but it has some very quirky nuances. Comps are really hard in land. Like literally, you can house like appraisers that like give like as a job, they run comps. They can't evaluate land. Banks don't generally, conventional banks won't lend on vacant land because they can't wrap their head around comps. Houses are way easier. So you have to use, it's kind of like 60% art and 40% science. You got to really look at some nuanced things and talk to experts and really look into some stuff to wrap your head around that. So there's some things that again, if you use land specialized agents the way we do, learning how to have that talk track. Because I often will reach out to land specialized agents without a signed contract, and I'll be like, hey, I need help running comps on this property. And if I can convert it, then I'll list it with you. And that's a very weird conversation to have, because they're like, well, how do I know that I can trust you that you're actually going to list it with me and I'm not wasting my time? So there's like hurdles like that you have to overcome. So.
Yeah, but I mean that's part of setting up those pipelines with buyers, right? Like if you feed them, several different properties, or consistently feed them properties, you're going to earn their time to do some evaluation every once in a while, because you're not.
Yes. And your agents, there's like almost 2 stages, like the dating stage and then the getting married stage. And once you do a handful of deals, they become like a fractional part of your team, where their birthdays. Like my wife has certain agents in certain markets where every week they sit on a call for an hour and a half and they run through a spreadsheet. And like, what do you think about this one? What do you think about this one? We've had agents in times past where my wife would just send a spreadsheet with like 25 properties and they'd comp it for us. Like that kind of stuff. But you have to like get them actually making money a few times over before they're willing to do stuff like that.
Yeah. So Jaren, you're right. When you set up these pipelines with the buyers, an easy thing, you're feeding the money, and it's an easy thing to forget how valuable you are to them. Right? Or you don't want to bother them, or you don't want to waste their time with an evaluation of a potential deal. But from their perspective, they're sitting back and you're consistently bringing them opportunities. They're not going to take every opportunity, but if you find the right pacing there, they're clearly going to have the patience to say, yeah, I'll take a few passes here and there, because there's gems, there's gems hidden in what this person's bringing me. So,
and I will say, for all of the newbie investors and wannabe investors that are listening to this, what Michael just said there is so important in real estate. You cannot fear bothering people. In a lot of ways, your job is to be politely annoying. Like, I really have to stress it, because in other industries, people like apparently have like an email culture where like you actually send an email and it's like expected to get a response in like 48 hours, whether it's vendors, like surveyors or soil engineers, agents, me, like we're like a phone oriented culture. So if you want a quick response, you need to call or text me. And if you don't get a response from an agent or what have you, if they're a good agent, they're busy. And if you don't hear from them within 6 hours or a day or so, text them again. My wife, even when it comes to sellers, there's a whole strategy that's been popularized by a friend of mine named Ajay Sharma in the land space. He calls it a double or triple dial, where you call, hang up, pick up, call again, hang up, and then call again, and then on the third call, leave a voicemail, send a text. So yeah, I'm like, my friend Ajay was hanging out with my wife, and my wife had a seller lead that ghosted her, and we were about a week out from closing, and she's like, I need to get a hold of this guy. And Ajay watched my wife literally dial this guy 7 times in the span of like an hour and a half, finally get a hold of him, and then make connection, and then the deal came through. And he was like, oh, I need to start being more aggressive on reaching out to people. Like, I'm too polite. And again, there's a fine line. You don't want to probably call people 10 times an hour for 8 hours straight, but maybe like err on the side of like 3 times a day, and maybe do like a send a text and send a voicemail, whenever you call. Err on the side of being politely annoying, because that's how you get stuff done.
Yeah, and there's definitely a fine line, right? And it's also important to remember what we were talking about is if you have multiple ways that you can reach them, it's really just about touch points and getting them to respond where they respond. Like, there's a reason why these different platforms invented the mark unread setting, right? Because people read and they forget to respond, or they get busy. So, having that ability to keep things top of mind or top of channel is important. But, if you, for instance, you send someone a call, or you call someone, they don't answer, and then you just follow up with standard sales practice of, hey, Jaren, it's Michael. I just tried to give you a call. Not sure what would be a better time to connect. 6 o'clock tonight work? Question mark. Right. Well, that's 2 touch points now, right? So if you then call them back at 6 o'clock at night, it was an expected call, right? They read that text message, they saw it. So if you're creative in the way you mix and match your channels, then it gets out of them just seeing unknown number, unknown number, unknown number, unknown number, and then they feel like it's being too pushy, right? So if you're creative with the touch points, then you can get those extra touch points in, and in a less invasive way, and still end up on that phone call, which is paramount, right? You have to eventually get them to a phone call, but it's different routes to the same destination, basically.
100% agree.
So I'd love to, I know we've kind of talked big picture about land, and we've kind of talked. I would love to have you just give us a day in the life of a land investor, right? Because most of I think the listening audience, they know what the day in the life of a wholesaler is like. I'm going to get up, I'm going to run my marketing channels for 2.5 hours. I'm going to go on site, running through like just an average day in the life of a land investor. What's that look like?
Yeah, so it depends on how you structure your workflow. I like to work in batches, so take that with a grain of salt. But I will. What's very normal is for me and my wife, to wake up early in the morning and have a couple hours of just straight comp work. So that's mostly my wife in the day-to-day trenches. I do a lot more of like working with members and education stuff, and I'm more in the trenches of the day-to-day with our members. But she'll wake up, early morning, sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier, but let's just call it 6 or so. Work for about, say, 2 to 3 hours, just preparing offer amounts. And then when the next phase of work, her team comes on, let's say around like, I don't know, the 8-ish, 9 o'clock, then we're going to send out the batches for the day, and they max out the account. So they send out as much as they possibly can for new leads, and then they work the first phase of first responses. And then from there, later on in the day, you can, again, when I was talking about batches, you can set it up where like you have, say, Monday and Tuesday are fresh outbound, like outreach, like sending out new batches. Then you have like a follow-up day on Wednesday, and then your offers on a different day, whatever. But for us, our optimal, like our goal is to get out as many offers as humanly possible. So that's why we spend the bulk of our time getting offers ready, and then having our team either call, or even sometimes if we're backlogged, just text out offers to people that would be open to them, and then have follow-ups, roughly one day. So I'd say out of a 5-day week, we're probably doing fresh batches and offers 3 days out of the week, and then doing follow-ups and kind of miscellaneous tasks related to closing. Due diligence is a big piece, but that's, my wife's assistant is the big lift there. She'll spends the majority of her day just calling different county departments and asking about a bunch of random stuff related to each deal. So it is definitely, to do it at scale, it is a pretty big lift, just like anything worth doing in life. But it's extremely profitable. I think our average deals, just a base hit deal in land, if you're self-funding, is 20,000 per deal. So it's, it depends on how big, and how there are people who just want to do one deal a month, and they live in South America, and just live like a king and just live it up. And then there's people like us who are a little bit more on the aggressive side in terms of scaling and what have you, and there's people everywhere in between. But that's kind of, if we were to take it high level, I think it's comping, new batches, fresh blood, offers, follow-ups, and then like title work and due diligence.
It's something I've noticed. You can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but a lot of times in wholesaling, people are starting in their own backyard, and they're probably going to be boots on the ground in some sense. Like, they're not going to make a final offer on a house until they've gone to the house, they've talked to the homeowner, they've been there, right? And I feel like in land, it seems that most investors are investing remotely. Like, there's not really a boots on the ground component.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I actually do think, though, that it is a competitive advantage to be willing to meet a seller in person. I honestly think land as an industry is very spoiled. Like, my house wholesaler friends, it's not uncommon for them to be spending $70,000 to $90,000 a month in marketing costs. You're like a big fish. You're like one of the top dogs if you're spending $10,000 a month in marketing for land.
Sure.
So it's just very different. And we have been pitched, I think, honestly, just because of who were the first people to start talking about land in terms of like the digital age and being online. They kind of pitched it as a like, work anywhere where there's a internet connection and la la la. And it's true, you can do it, but there are certain markets that are more competitive than others. Like Florida is probably the most competitive land market. There's a lot of history there. A lot of the reason why Florida developed as a place, like as a civilization, is because of like land investing. There's a whole book on it called Swamp Peddlers. But all that aside, if the people that I know that are crushing it in Florida are branded locally to Florida and will meet with sellers in person. That, and we also generally as an industry run on buying stuff at 35 cents to like 50 cents on the dollar. And you do want to have a little bit more buffer because comps are harder to wrap your head around. But in more competitive areas, they're starting to offer more closer to like 60, 70% on the dollar. But it's because they're more hands-on and it's their backyard. So I wouldn't necessarily like say that everybody should exclude doing their backyard, but there are places where the land business is easier to do than in others. And so oftentimes people just choose where it's one of the like 7 or so states that a lot of other land investors are in because people have come before them and proven the market. But I think there's tons of opportunity in places like Wisconsin and Montana and I mean, people don't realize, but only 3 to 6% of the land mass in the United States is actually developed. So all the cities, all the roads, all the stuff, it's only on 3 to 6% of the land mass.
Yeah.
And sure, there's a big chunk that's not unusable land and federally owned land, but even if all of what we understand as civilization is on 3 to 6%, even if we had like 20% or 30% of the land mass in the US that was viable for doing deals, we have so much opportunity. Like nobody ever talks about upstate New York or Alaska. We've had members that we funded deals for in both places, and like they're great places to do the business. People don't realize upstate New York it's not New York City. It looks almost like Colorado. It's like luscious and green and amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and it points to the opportunity in land. And so this we'll wrap up with this question. So what do you see as kind of the future of land investing? And as now a successful land investor, are you a little bit worried about all the wholesale investors with big stars in their eyes looking over at land and kind of licking their chops?
I'm not concerned about competition because people actually ask me that all the time. Like it's one of the routine things that I get asked in discovery calls of people who are kind of vetting us out to see if they want to become a member of the Land Maverick Society. I'm not concerned about competition because, like I said, you got to understand when a house investor talks about their market, they're talking about a city or maybe even a section of the city or town. When a land investor talks about a market, they're talking about an entire county. Like the scale is so much wider, so much bigger that yeah, sure, maybe there might be a really hot county that we need to go and take our business somewhere else unless we have some competitive advantage in that county. But there's a whole world of subdividing, like using the plotting exemptions in certain states where essentially you're pre-approved for dividing land. Like if you hit certain criteria, like a certain lot size and a certain lot count. And I mean, you can just like in those markets, if you find something that you can cut up into smaller stuff, just by going through the subdivide process, you build in your value. So you can get stuff on market and just subdivide it and make tons and tons of money. And like that's not really being exploited at scale. I mean, it's again, yeah, sure. Maybe we could talk about a few counties in Texas, or maybe we could talk about a few counties in Colorado, Arizona that are pretty competitive, but it's all relative. What we call competitive in land is a joke for house wholesalers. They're like, you don't know, going to a motivated seller bidding war where everybody has a contract in hand and you're fighting to get there to be the first person there to win the deal. Like nobody does that in land. Like hardly anybody even calls people on the weekends. Like they just like normally treat it like a Monday through Friday job. So it's totally different. It's a totally different world.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me that because there are so many different things that you can do with land if you have the gift of time, right? So if you're able to go into it and build up enough cash flow from it, that you can just sit on some of those properties long enough to go through the subdivide process, or to land hack them in another way, or to add a couple of permanent features to jack up the price of it. There's if you have that luxury to kind of sit and develop it even minorly, I feel like there's just a ton of financial upside to that.
Well, and to that, you really need to make sure that you can figure out how to fund deals. There are people who try to wholesale or double close or whatever, and you can. I think it's good to have as a tool in your tool belt, but it's much better to have a funder that you could tap on their shoulders and like, even if it's a 50-50 split of the deal, ride out the wave, because you do have a longer hold period. And so the funder would bear that burden, and you could just focus on doing what you do best as an operator, just get more deals.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. For anybody that wants to work directly with you, to get involved with the Land Maverick Society, what's the best thing to do? And we'll, of course, put everything in the description of the episode.
Yeah. So I give out people a free 30-minute coaching call. So we can jump on a call together, strategize about what your current real estate operation looks like or lack thereof, and what you want it to look like, and how you want land to be a part of that. So if you text launch control, the phrase launch control, to 219-419-7797. Again, that's 219-419-7797, or check out the show notes. That'll get you prompted to get on a call with me, and we'll make it happen. 30-minute free coaching call.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely put that into the show notes for everyone. I was trying to rapidly type it out, but we'll just do it in the follow-up. So yeah, again, man, thanks again so much for coming on, and yeah, might bring you back on to deep dive into some specifics on land. I think it's a topic that the Deal Nation audience is definitely interested in.
Yeah, man. And likewise, I want to get you on the Land Maverick Society stuff. Our podcast is season 2 is coming out very, very soon. But in the meantime, we always generally go live on Fridays in our Facebook group. So I'd love to have you come on and hang out with us over there. So
we'll do that.
Till next time, Michael.
Till next time.